These are the 7 levels of zombie shelters. Level 1, trash shelters. This is whatever you can reach in the next 60 seconds. A car with the doors locked, an attic with the ladder pulled up, a closet where you're praying the infected outside have short attention spans. Level 1 shelters are designed for not dying right this second. Zombieland opens with Columbus already living this reality. His rules for survival include checking the back seat and always knowing your exits, because when your shelter is a vehicle, it better have gas and a clear road. The RV becomes a mobile panic room, good for outrunning shamblers, but useless the moment you hit traffic or run dry. 28 days later shows Jim waking up in a hospital and immediately seeking cover in abandoned buildings, ducking through doorways and behind corners. Every temporary hide buys him minutes to figure out where the actual infected are and where he needs to go next. The key feature is speed. You don't fortify a level 1. You use it, then abandon it. Treehouses and rooftops show up across multiple films as vertical escapes. Zombies can't climb, so elevation becomes an instant advantage until you realize you're stuck up there with no food, and the horde below has infinite patience. Billboard platforms, construction scaffolding, even parked semi-trucks with the ladder retracted all serve the same purpose. They're not homes, they're pauses. The classic closet hide appears in everything from Resident Evil to Shaun of the Dead, where characters jam themselves into tight spaces and hold the door while rotting hands claw at the wood. Sometimes it works. Sometimes the door gives. The survival rate is basically a coin flip, but here's the problem with level 1 shelters. They force you to keep moving. You can't sleep, can't cook, can't do anything except crouch in the dark and hope morning brings a better option. Attics trap you when the horde below won't leave. Vehicles run out of gas. Closets run out of air. The moment you commit to a makeshift hide, you're already planning your next move, because staying puts you on a timer you can't extend. So why do people choose them? Because when the alternative is being ripped apart in the street, even 60 seconds of safety feels like winning. But temporary hides are just buying time. What happens when you need more than 60 seconds? Keep that question in mind, because the answer gets people killed in ways you wouldn't expect. Level 2, basic shelters. Your house, your apartment, your neighbor's place that you just broke into. Level 2 shelters are where most outbreaks start and where most survivors make their first real stand. They're familiar, they have supplies, they have beds and kitchens and walls that feel solid until 100 zombies lean against them at once. Night of the Living Dead set the template. Ben and Barbara and 5 others lock themselves in a Pennsylvania farmhouse while the dead surround the property. They board the windows, pile furniture against the doors, and destroy the staircase to create a choke point. For one night, it works. The house becomes a microcosm of every group survival story, arguments about who's in charge, debates about staying versus leaving, tensions that boil over because everyone's terrified and nobody knows what to do. The farmhouse holds against the zombies outside but can't stop the chaos inside. By dawn, the real threat wasn't the ghouls at the windows. It was the people making terrible decisions in a space with nowhere left to run. The Night Eats the World takes this concept to isolation. Sam wakes up in a Parisian apartment after a party to find everyone outside either dead or infected. He's alone in a building with enough supplies to last weeks if he's careful. The apartment becomes both sanctuary and prison. He builds routines. He scavenges from other floors. He avoids windows. He survives on sheer tedium because there's nobody else to talk to and nothing to do except wait for rescue that might never come. The film proves that level 2 shelters can sustain you physically while destroying you mentally, because humans aren't built for that kind of solitude. Cargo shows a family's home in rural Australia during a slow burn outbreak. Andy and his family try to maintain normalcy in their house before the infection spreads too far. When it does, they're forced onto a houseboat, which is technically still level 2 but mobile. The houseboat offers isolation on the water where zombies can't follow, proving that residential doesn't always mean stationary, but supplies still run low. Safety still depends on staying hidden, and eventually, you still have to go ashore. The features are simple: beds, food storage, multiple rooms for barricading. The weaknesses are equally obvious. Houses weren't designed to be forts. Windows break, doors splinter, zombies don't get tired. A dozen infected can press against your boarded up front door for days until the wood cracks some and the nails pull loose. The only advantage is that you know the layout. You know which rooms lock and which hallways lead to exits. That knowledge buys you time, but it won't buy you forever. So you board the windows, ration what's in the pantry, and plan your escape route for when the horde gets too big to ignore. The real question is, when do you leave? Stay too long and you're trapped. Leave too early and you abandon resources you'll need. Most survivors wait until the walls start giving, which means they leave 5 minutes too late, and half of them don't make it to the car. Houses seem safe until they're not, but here's what nobody asks. If residential homes fail so predictably, why does every survivor's first instinct lead them there? The answer reveals something darker about human psychology under pressure. Level 3, bad shelters. Pubs, gas stations, small stores with roll-down gates and reinforced entrances. Level 3 shelters trade residential comfort for structural security. These buildings were designed to keep people out after hours, which means they're also pretty good at keeping zombies out during the apocalypse. Shaun of the Dead turns this into dark comedy. Shaun, Liz, and the rest of the group fight their way across London to reach the Winchester, their neighborhood pub. The plan is simple. Get inside, lock the doors, wait for everything to blow over while drinking pints. The pub has gates on the windows, heavy doors, a loaded shotgun behind the bar, and enough alcohol to keep everyone calm or drunk enough to stop caring. For a few hours, it's perfect. They barricade themselves in, smash a zombie's head with pool cues to the beat of Queen, and genuinely believe they've found safety. Then the horde breaks through anyway because no building can hold forever when the infected are willing to pile up 10 deep just to push forward. Return of the Living Dead features a medical supply warehouse where workers accidentally release a zombie plague. The warehouse becomes an ad hoc shelter with metal shelves for barricades and industrial doors that seal. The group tries to contain the outbreak within the building, which works until the zombies prove they're smarter than expected. The warehouse offers space, storage, and enough tools to improvise weapons, but it's still just a big box with windows. Once the infected surround it, escape becomes impossible. The Dead Don't Die uses a police station as a small-town refuge. Chief Cliff Robertson and Officer Ronnie Peterson face off against their former neighbors in a building with holding cells, weapons storage, and reinforced doors. The station gives them a command center, radio equipment, and defensible choke points. For a small group, it's ideal. For a large horde, it's a temporary obstacle at best. The film leans into the absurdity of small-town cops trying to survive the apocalypse from a building designed for drunk drivers and petty theft, not waves of the undead. Small commercial buildings work because they're built tougher than houses, but still accessible enough to reach in an emergency. Roll-down metal gates slow zombies. Reinforced glass holds longer. Stockrooms contain supplies meant for customers who will never show up to buy them. The problem is size. You can fit maybe a dozen survivors comfortably. Any more and you're tripping over each other. Any fewer and you don't have enough people to defend all the entrances when things go bad. And things always go bad. Someone makes noise. Someone lights a fire that attracts attention. Someone gets bit and doesn't tell the group until they turn inside the perimeter. Small buildings amplify every mistake because there's nowhere to isolate problems. One infected person in a pub means everyone's fighting hand-to-hand in a room with no space to retreat. So you lock the doors, push shelves against the windows, and hope the infected outside lose interest before your supplies run out. Spoiler, they don't. Small buildings buy you. Weeks if you're lucky. But what if you didn't have to leave? What if there was enough space, enough supplies, enough of everything to make you forget the world ended? That's where things get dangerous, because abundance creates problems deadlier than scarcity. Level 4. Mid-shelters. Shopping malls, hotels, big box stores with loading docks and multiple floors. Level 4 shelters are where survivors stop running and start living. These complexes have everything: food courts, clothing stores, pharmacies, hardware supplies. You could lock yourself in a mall and not leave for months if you manage the resources right. Dawn of the Dead created the archetype. 4 survivors, 2 cops, a TV worker, and his girlfriend escape to a Pennsylvania shopping mall via helicopter and secure it against the undead. The mall is a survivor's paradise, stores full of canned goods, clothing, weapons, entertainment. They clear the zombies out by luring them into trucks and blocking the entrances. For weeks, they live like kings. They ice skate in the sporting goods section, try on fur coats, blast music, and genuinely start to forget the world outside is dead. The mall represents the American dream turned into a fortress. Consumerism becomes survival. The abundance is intoxicating until raiders arrive, blow the doors open, and flood the place with thousands of zombies. The 2004 remake amps up the tension by adding fast zombies in a larger group, turning the mall into a pressure cooker where every supply run outside becomes a suicide mission. Rec takes a building lockdown in a different direction. A reporter and cameraman follow firefighters into a Barcelona apartment complex during a rabies outbreak. The government seals the building from the outside, trapping everyone inside with the infected. The complex becomes a vertical maze of apartments, hallways, and stairwells where every floor could hide something worse than the last. It's claustrophobic, despite the size, because there's no escape. The building has resources scattered across dozens of units, but accessing them means navigating tight spaces while infected residents hunt in the dark. Army of the Dead swaps the mall for a casino. A team of mercenaries breaks into Las Vegas, now a walled quarantine zone, to rob a casino vault before the government nukes the city. The casino offers everything a shelter should: supplies, defensible positions, multiple exits. The problem is, they're not staying, they're raiding. But the film proves that large commercial spaces can support survivors long-term if you control the entrances and avoid drawing attention from whatever evolved zombies are running the show outside. The advantage is space. You can separate groups, set up sleeping quarters on upper floors away from entrances, rotate guards, build defenses in layers. The mall in Dawn of the Dead survives as long as it does because the survivors control the ground floor and use the upper level as living space. Hotels offer rooms with locks. Big box stores offer loading docks for escapes. The sheer size means you're not constantly on top of each other, which reduces interpersonal conflicts until the stakes get high enough that personalities clash anyway. The mall feels like winning the apocalypse lottery, except there's something about large complexes that attracts more than just survivors. And when it arrives, all those supplies won't matter. But here's the catch. Large complexes attract large hordes. A mall with lights on and noise inside becomes a beacon for every zombie within miles. The more survivors, the more noise. The more noise, the bigger the crowd outside. Eventually, the horde reaches critical mass, and no amount of barricades holds. So you live well for as long as it lasts, knowing that every day of abundance is borrowed time against the sheer weight of bodies piling up at your doors. Commercial complexes fail because they're too visible. So the next step makes sense. Go somewhere designed to keep threats out. But if prisons and fortified buildings are so perfect, why do they appear in fewer survival stories? Keep that question ready, because the answer isn't about zombies. Level 5. OK Shelter. Prisons, casinos with vault-level security, reinforced public buildings designed to withstand riots or attacks. Level 5 shelters were built to keep people in or out, which makes them perfect for keeping zombies out. High fences, guard towers, reinforced gates. These places don't fall easily. Army of the Dead's casino vault represents the peak of fortified structures. It's buried beneath a collapsed building, accessible through mazes of corridors, sealed with military-grade doors. The vault itself could survive anything short of the nuke headed its way. The casino above offers multiple defensible layers, with the survivors creating choke points through debris and furniture. The Zombie King, Zeus, and his alphas control the city outside, but the casino's interior remains secure as long as the team keeps moving. The film proves that fortified structures work when you treat them as temporary bases, not permanent homes. Prisons show up across zombie media as theoretical perfect shelters. High walls, watchtowers, armories, cells for quarantine, farmland inside the perimeter. The Walking Dead comics and show exploit this in ways the film adaptations haven't fully explored, but the concept remains. Prisons are pre-built fortresses. The problem is psychological. Locking yourself inside a structure designed to cage people creates its own horror. The cells become reminders that you're trapped even when you're free. Guard towers that once watched inmates now watch for hordes. And if anyone inside turns, you're fighting in corridors with no room to maneuver. I Am Legend features Robert Neville fortifying his New York City townhouse to military precision. Steel shutters, UV lights, weapons cache, escape routes. He's turned a residential building into a level 5 fortress through sheer engineering. The fortification holds against nightly attacks from infected Darkseekers who are smart enough to test the defenses but not strong enough to break through. It works until Neville's hubris gets him captured, proving that even the best fortifications fail when you underestimate what's outside. Fortified structures introduce governance, prisons have hierarchies, casinos have security protocols. These are places where groups organize, assign roles, and build systems. The structure enforces order because the layout demands it. Guard rotations, supply distribution, conflict resolution all become formalized because the space is too big and too important to leave chaotic. That's the upside. The downside is that formalized systems breed resentment. Someone's always in charge, which means someone's always questioning that authority. Internal conflicts escalate faster in fortified spaces because there's nowhere to walk away to cool off. Fortifications solve the zombie problem, but create a different crisis entirely. One that doesn't shamble or bite, but destroys from within. The other issue is visibility. A fortified structure looks like a fortress, which means every survivor within miles wants in, and every zombie horde sees an obvious target. You might hold off the undead, but you can't hold off desperate humans who will do anything to get inside walls that actually protect. So you set guards, enforce curfews, and make hard choices about who gets to stay and who gets turned away at the gate. Eventually, those choices haunt you, because the person you refused entry might have been the mechanic or doctor you desperately need 3 weeks later. Above-ground forts still expose you to threats. So humanity's answer was simple. Go underground where nothing can reach you. Except going underground introduced something worse than any horde, and one bunker proves it'll break you faster than starvation. Level 6. Apex Shelters. Underground complexes built to survive nuclear war, complete with air filtration, stockpiles, labs, and enough concrete to bury you 50 feet beneath the surface. Level 6 shelters are where governments plan to wait out the apocalypse. Turns out they work just as well for zombies as they do for radiation. Day of the Dead takes place almost entirely in an underground military bunker in Florida. Scientists and soldiers share the the facility, studying captured zombies to find a cure while the dead overrun everything above. The bunker has everything: power generators, armories, medical labs, food storage, living quarters. It's designed to sustain a population for years. The problem is the population inside is already at war with itself. Scientists want to experiment. Soldiers want to escape. Nobody trusts anyone. The bunker becomes a pressure cooker where paranoia and desperation explode into violence. The zombies never breach the bunker. The humans destroy it from within. Day of the Dead. Bloodline revisits the concept with a bunker that includes military medical labs. Survivors use the facility to research the infection while defending against both external hordes and internal threats. The bunker's labs offer tools to study the virus, perform surgeries, and attempt cures. The military aspect provides weapons, training, and tactical knowledge. But the isolation breeds claustrophobia, fluorescent lights, recycled air, walls that never change. People start cracking not because the zombies are winning, but because living underground feels like being buried alive. Hidden features: a family sheltering in a backyard bomb shelter for 301 days after an outbreak. They've sealed themselves in with supplies, a hand-cranked generator, and strict routines to avoid detection. The shelter keeps them safe from the infected outside, but the psychological toll is crushing. Days blur. The daughter grows up knowing nothing but concrete walls and whispered conversations. The twist reveals the outbreak wasn't what they thought, but the bunker served its purpose, keeping them alive at the cost of their sanity. The technical advantages are overwhelming. Bunkers filter air, preventing biological contamination. Sealed entrances mean zombies can't follow. Food stockpiles last years of ration. Underground placement hides you from visual detection. You're invisible to the hordes above, living in a self-sustaining bubble where the apocalypse might as well not exist. Some bunkers include hydroponics for food, water recyclers, even armories stocked for long-term defense. But the psychological cost is brutal. No sunlight, no weather, no sense of time beyond the clock on the wall. People lose track of days, then weeks, then months. Personalities clash in ways they wouldn't above ground because there's no space to decompress. Fights escalate faster. Paranoia sets in deeper. The bunker that saved your life starts feeling like a tomb you volunteered for. And if someone snaps, if someone sabotages the air filters or the water supply, if someone opens the door to let the infected in, there's no escape. You're 50 feet underground with one exit and a stairwell full of zombies between you and the surface. The bunker keeps you alive while destroying everything that made life worth living. But isolation underground is still just one problem. What comes next is where shelters stop being refugees and become targets every faction wants to control. Military bunkers also attract governments and factions who want what you have. If word gets out that a functional bunker exists, every armed group within range will try to take it. The bunker becomes a prize worth killing for, and the people inside become targets, whether they're ready to fight or not. So you lock the doors, ration the food, and pray that nobody above remembers you're down there. Because the moment they do, your invisible fortress becomes a siege waiting to happen. Bunkers hide you from the apocalypse. But what if you didn't need to hide? What if you could build walls so high, cities so large, that the dead couldn't touch you? That's level 7, and there's a reason it shows up at the end of every zombie story right before everything collapses. Level 7, God-level shelter. Walled cities, offshore islands, military fleets. Level 7 shelters are rebuilding civilization in its aftermath. These are the endgame strongholds where humanity makes its last stand, complete with governments, economies, and walls high enough to keep the dead permanently outside. World War Z shows multiple Level 7 examples. Jerusalem erects massive walls around the old city, creating a fortified enclave where survivors from around the region take refuge. The walls are engineering marvels: thick concrete, guarded checkpoints, military patrols. For a while, it works. The city becomes a beacon of hope, proof that humanity can organize and defend itself. Then someone starts singing. The noise draws millions of zombies who pile up against the walls until sheer weight and climbing corpses breach the defenses. The film shows that even the best fortifications fail against overwhelming numbers and human error. The naval fleet becomes the real Level 7, with ships maintaining distance from shore, survivors living aboard carriers and destroyers. The fleet is mobile, defensible, and self-sustaining with desalination and fishing. It's the perfect shelter except for limited space, and the fact that you're floating forever with no land to call home. Land of the Dead features Fiddler's Green, a luxury high-rise in a walled section of Pittsburgh. The city is divided. The rich live in the tower, the poor live in the streets below, and zombies roam outside the walls. The city operates with its own economy, security forces, and class system. It's civilization reborn, complete with all the inequality and corruption that implies. The tower represents humanity's refusal to change even when the world ends. The wealthy hoard resources, the poor scrape by, and everyone pretends the walls will hold forever. They don't. The zombie leader Big Daddy learns to lead his horde across the river, bypassing the defenses and proving that adaptation isn't just for the living. Walled cities work until they don't, and when they fail catastrophically in ways that make every previous level look survivable. But here's what makes Level 7 different from everything before it. The resort takes the concept to a remote island where the zombie outbreak has been contained. The island becomes a safari resort where wealthy tourists pay to hunt infected in controlled environments. The resort is fortified with electric fences, guard towers, and military oversight. It's safe because the zombies are weaponized entertainment, controlled and contained, until a system failure releases them all at once, turning the paradise into a death trap. The film proves that Level 7 shelters require constant maintenance and oversight because the moment systems fail, the largest fortification becomes the largest disaster. Cargo's ending shows a remote survivor community in the Australian outback. Small groups band together in fortified homesteads, creating networks of support without centralizing into cities. It's a distributed Level 7, where multiple small strongholds coordinate, rather than one massive fortress drawing attention. The approach sacrifices the advantages of scale-shared resources, large defenses, but gains resilience. If one homestead falls, the others survive. It's decentralized survival, acknowledging that putting everyone in one place creates a single point of failure. The advantages are obvious: walls, manpower, resources, organization. Level 7 shelters support hundreds or thousands of people, enabling specialization. Farmers grow food, engineers maintain infrastructure, soldiers defend perimeters. You're living, schools reopen, markets trade goods, governments pass laws. It's the closest humanity gets to normal after the outbreak, and that normalcy is intoxicating after months or years of running and hiding. But the risks scale with the size. Larger populations mean more noise, more waste, more conflicts. Walls that protect also trap. If infection breaks out inside, you're dealing with hundreds of infected in close quarters. If the walls fail, everyone dies at once. And because Level 7 shelters are visible from miles away, they attract every threat in the region. Zombies, raiders, rival factions. The bigger the fortress, the bigger the target painted on it. There's also the politics. Someone has to be in charge. Someone has to decide who gets food, who gets medicine, who gets left outside when the gates close. Those decisions breed resentment. Factions form. Coups happen. The internal politics of a walled city can be deadlier than the zombies outside because, at least with zombies, you know what they want. Humans are unpredictable. Humans lie, scheme, and betray. The perfect fortress crumbles the moment the people inside stop trusting each other. So why build them? Because the alternative is giving up. Level 7 shelters represent humanity's refusal to accept extinction. They're the declaration that we'll rebuild, we'll defend, we'll survive no matter how many dead pound at the walls. They're hope made concrete, and that hope is worth fighting for, even when every rational part of your brain says it's doomed to fail. The truth about the 7 levels is they're not about architecture. They're about time. Level 1 buys you hours. Level 2 buys you days. Level 3 buys you weeks. Level 4 buys you months. Level 5 buys you years. Level 6 buries you alive, but keeps you breathing. Level 7 lets you pretend the world didn't end, right up until the moment it proves you wrong. Every survivor climbs the levels looking for safety that doesn't exist. The farmhouse falls. The mall gets overrun. The bunker suffocates you. The walled city collapses. There's no perfect shelter because the problem isn't the building, it's the people inside and the horde outside. But you keep climbing anyway because the alternative is standing still. And standing still in a zombie apocalypse means dying where you stand. The best shelter isn't the strongest or the biggest. It's the one you can leave when you need to, because the moment you convince yourself you're safe is the moment you stop preparing for when it all goes wrong. And in every zombie film ever made, it always goes wrong. So you board the windows, lock the doors, and ration the supplies. You build the walls higher, dig the bunkers deeper, and fortify the fortress stronger. You do everything right. And when the horde finally breaks through, you'll already be planning your escape to the next level. Because survival isn't about finding safety. It's about staying one step ahead of the moment your shelter becomes your grave. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.